The gunshot echoed across the canyon just as Victoria Owens felt her mare stumble. And in that terrible moment between heartbeat and horror, she knew her journey to meet her sister in Deadwood had just become a fight for survival. Victoria hit the ground hard, dust billowing around her as she rolled instinctively away from the thrashing animal. Her mare, a reliable chestnut she had raised from a filly, screamed in pain as it tried to stand on a leg that bent at an unnatural angle. The sound cut through Victoria like a blade, sharp and merciless. She scrambled to her feet, her traveling dress torn at the hem, her dark hair falling loose from its careful arrangement. The September sun beat down mercilessly on the Wyoming territory, and she was 3 days' ride from Cody, the last town she had passed through. "Easy, easy, girl," Victoria whispered, approaching her horse with trembling hands. The mare's eyes rolled white with panic, nostrils flaring. Victoria could see immediately that the front leg was broken, snapped clean when the horse had stepped into a hidden prairie dog hole. Her heart sank like a stone in water. She knew what had to be done, but she had no gun. Her father's rifle had been in the saddle holster, and now it lay somewhere beneath the fallen horse. The vastness of the landscape pressed in on her. Rolling hills stretched endlessly in every direction, covered in sage and dry grass that whispered secrets in the hot wind. She was alone, miles from any settlement, with a dying horse and limited supplies. Victoria felt panic rising in her throat but forced it down. She was 22 years old, had helped run her family's ranch in Colorado for years after her mother passed, and she would not fall apart now. She managed to calm the mare enough to retrieve her canteen and the small bag of provisions she had packed. The rifle was indeed trapped, and she did not have the strength to move the horse. Victoria stroked the mare's neck, tears streaming down her face, whispering apologies and comfort as the animal's breathing grew more labored. She knew leaving the horse alive and suffering was cruel, but she had no means to end its misery quickly. The second gunshot she heard that afternoon was closer, and Victoria's head snapped up. Riders. Her hand went instinctively to the small knife at her belt, her only remaining weapon. In this territory in 1885, riders could mean salvation or something far worse. She had heard stories of outlaws, of women traveling alone who were never seen again, but she also knew she could not survive out here alone for long. 3 horses appeared over the ridge, and Victoria's breath caught. Cowboys, from the look of them, with wide-brimmed hats and the dust of long travel on their clothes. The lead rider sat tall in his saddle, and even from a distance, she could see the way he surveyed the scene before him with quick, intelligent eyes. Owen Jackson had been tracking stray cattle from his ranch for 2 days when he spotted the woman standing beside the fallen horse. He raised his hand, signaling his 2 ranch hands to slow their approach. The last thing he wanted was to spook an already frightened person. As they drew closer, he could see she was young, with striking features and eyes that watched their approach with a mixture of hope and wariness. "Madam," Owen called out when they were within speaking distance, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Looks like you have found yourself in some trouble." Victoria's voice came out stronger than she felt. "My horse broke her leg in a hole. I need help." Owen dismounted smoothly, a man in his mid-20s with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He approached the horse slowly, taking in the situation with the practiced eye of someone who had spent his entire life around animals. His expression was grave when he looked back at Victoria. "This is a clean break, madam. I'm sorry, but there is nothing to be done for her." He paused, his voice gentle. "I can end her suffering if you would like. It would be quick." Victoria nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She turned away as Owen drew his revolver, and when the shot rang out, she flinched but did not cry out. The mare's labored breathing stopped, and the silence that followed felt heavy and final. "Thank you," Victoria managed, wiping her eyes quickly. "I could not do it myself, but I could not leave her suffering either." "No one should have to do that to an animal they care about," Owen said quietly, holstering his weapon. "Where were you headed?" "Deadwood. My sister's expecting me. I've been traveling from our ranch in Colorado." Owen's eyebrows rose. "Deadwood is more than a week's ride from here, madam, and that's on a good horse with no delays. You're in the middle of nowhere right now." "I'm aware of that," Victoria said, a hint of steel entering her voice. She might be stranded, but she was not helpless. "I had planned to resupply in Cody, but I took a shortcut my father used to use. Clearly, that was a mistake." One of the ranch hands, a grizzled man named Pete, spoke up. "Boss, we should be getting back. Sun will be setting in a few hours." Owen looked between Victoria and his men, then back at the vast emptiness surrounding them. "We are headed back to my ranch, about 4 hours' ride from here. You are welcome to ride with me, and we can figure out what to do from there. I cannot in good conscience leave you out here alone." Victoria hesitated. Everything she had been taught told her to be cautious of strangers, especially men in isolated places. But she also knew her options were limited to non-existent. She studied Owen Jackson's face, looking for signs of deception or ill intent. What she saw was honest concern and a straightforward directness that inspired a cautious trust. "I would appreciate that," she said finally. "My name is Victoria Owens." "Owen Jackson. This is Pete and Samuel." He gestured to his companions, both of whom touched their hat brims in greeting. "We will need to leave your saddle for now, but I can send someone back for it tomorrow. Can you ride?" "I've been riding since I was 4 years old, Mr. Jackson." A slight smile tugged at Owen's mouth. "Just making sure, Miss Owens. Come on, then." He led her to his horse, a sturdy bay gelding with intelligent eyes. Owen mounted first, then offered his hand to Victoria. She grasped it, feeling the calluses that spoke of hard work, and let him pull her up behind him. It was an intimate position, closer to a man than she had ever been, and she felt her cheeks flush despite the situation. "Hold on," Owen instructed, and Victoria wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. "It is going to be a long ride." They set off across the grassland, the two ranch hands flanking them. Victoria tried to maintain a respectful distance, but the rhythm of the horse's gait kept throwing her against Owen's back. After a while, she gave up and simply held on, too exhausted and emotionally drained to worry about propriety. "Tell me about your ranch," Victoria said after they had been riding for an hour. Talking seemed better than silence, and she wanted to know more about the man who had likely saved her life. "Not much to tell that is different from any other ranch in the territory," Owen said, his voice carrying easily despite the wind. "My father started it 20 years ago when this was still wild country. I took over when he passed 2 years back. We run about 500 head of cattle, have a dozen hands, and spend most of our time trying to keep the operation profitable. Sounds like our place in Colorado. My father runs about 300 head. It is just him and my 2 brothers now. I was helping until my sister wrote and asked me to come to Deadwood." "What is in Deadwood?" "My sister married a merchant there. She's about to have her first baby and wanted family with her. I am to stay and help her for a few months." Victoria paused. Or at least that was the plan. "We will get you there," Owen assured her. "Might take a few extra days, but we will find you a horse and supplies." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I do not have much money, Mr. Jackson. I can pay a little, but not what a good horse is worth. We will work something out. Do not worry about that now." They rode on as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Victoria found herself relaxing despite the strangeness of the situation. There was something steady and reassuring about Owen Jackson, a quiet competence that made her feel safe. She noticed the way he sat his horse, the easy grace of someone completely at home in the saddle. She noticed the breadth of his shoulders, the way his dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck beneath his hat. She mentally shook herself. Now was not the time for such thoughts. She was a guest, dependent on this man's charity, and she would not complicate matters by developing inappropriate feelings. As twilight fell, they crested a rise, and Victoria saw lights twinkling in the valley below. The ranch was larger than she had expected, with a main house, several outbuildings, a large barn, and corrals that held dozens of horses. It looked prosperous and well-maintained. "Home," Owen announced. "Samuel, can you see to the horses? Pete, let Mary know we have a guest for supper and we'll need a room prepared." The ranch hands peeled off to handle their tasks, and Owen rode straight to the main house. He dismounted and helped Victoria down, and her legs nearly buckled after hours in the saddle. His hands steadied her immediately. "Easy there. It has been a long ride." "I am fine," Victoria insisted, even as she gripped his arms for balance. "Just need a moment." The front door of the house opened, and a woman in her 50s appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "Owen? Pete said you brought someone?" "This is Miss Victoria Owens. She had some trouble on the trail. Miss Owens, this is Mary Hendricks. She runs the house and keeps all of us in line." Mary's eyes were sharp but kind as she looked Victoria over, taking in her disheveled appearance and exhausted face. "You look done in, dear. Come inside. I will get you washed up and fed." "I do not want to impose," Victoria started, but Mary was already ushering her toward the door. "Nonsense! Any friend of Owens is welcome here. Besides, it will be nice to have another woman around for a change. I'm surrounded by dusty cowboys all day." Inside, the house was comfortable and well appointed. It was clear that Owen's father had built something meant to last. Mary led Victoria to a guest room with a real bed, a washstand, and clean linens. "I will have one of the hands bring up some hot water. You take your time and freshen up. Supper will be ready in about an hour." Mary paused in the doorway. "I'm glad Owen found you. The territory can be unforgiving to those traveling alone." When Victoria was finally alone, she sank onto the bed and let herself feel the full weight of the day. Her mare was dead. Her plans were in ruins. She was dependent on the kindness of strangers. But she was alive. She was safe. And something about Owen Jackson made her feel that everything might actually work out. She washed her face and hands in the basin of hot water that arrived, changed into her one spare dress from the bag she had managed to salvage, and tried to do something with her hair. When she looked in the small mirror above the washstand, she saw a young woman with dirt still smudged on her cheek despite washing, wild dark hair that refused to be tamed, and eyes that looked older than they had this morning. Supper was served in a large dining room with a table that could seat a dozen people. Tonight it was just Victoria, Owen, and Mary, along with Pete and Samuel. The food was simple, but good beef stew, fresh bread, and vegetables from what Mary proudly declared was her garden. "So, Miss Owens," Mary said as they ate, "Owen mentioned you are from Colorado. What part?" "Near Pueblo. My family has a ranch there." "And you were headed to Deadwood all alone?" There was no judgment in Mary's tone, just curiosity. "My father could not spare my brothers right now, and I thought I could manage. I've made long rides before." Victoria set down her fork. "But not alone, and not quite this far. It was foolish." "Brave," Owen corrected quietly. "Foolish would be continuing after you knew it was a bad idea. You were just unfortunate." Their eyes met across the table, and Victoria felt a strange flutter in her chest. She looked away quickly, focusing on her stew. After supper, Owen asked Victoria to join him on the front porch. The night air was cool and filled with the sounds of crickets and distant cattle. They sat in wooden chairs, and for a while, neither spoke. "I want to thank you properly," Victoria said finally. "You saved my life today." "I just gave you a ride," Owen replied. "Any decent person would have done the same." "That is not true, and you know it. There are plenty of people who would have ridden past, or worse." She turned to look at him. "I owe you a debt." "You do not owe me anything." Owen's voice was firm. "But we do need to talk about what happens next. Deadwood is a long way off, and you will need a horse, supplies, and preferably someone to travel with. The territory between here and there is not safe for a woman alone." "I know, but I do not want to burden you further. If you could take me to Cody, I can try to arrange something from there." "Cody is 3 days back the way we came. That does not make much sense." Owen was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I need to take a herd to Sheridan next week. That is north of here, in the right direction. You could come along with the drive, and from Sheridan, we can arrange proper passage to Deadwood." Victoria's mind raced. Traveling with a cattle drive meant at least a week or more in Owen Jackson's company. It meant further dependence on his generosity. But it also made practical sense, and she could hardly refuse out of stubborn pride. Are you sure? I do not want to slow you down or cause problems with your work. We have a chuck wagon with the drive. You can ride in that or on horseback, whichever you prefer. It is not going to be comfortable, and you will earn your keep helping with meals and camp chores, but it will get you closer to your sister." "Then I accept, and thank you again, Mr. Jackson." "Owen," he corrected. "If we are going to be traveling together for a week or more, we should probably use first names." "Owen," Victoria repeated, liking the way it felt in her mouth. "And you should call me Victoria." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, looking up at the vast canopy of stars that seemed so much brighter and more numerous out here than they ever had in town. Victoria felt the tension of the day finally beginning to ease from her shoulders. "Can I ask you something?" Owen said suddenly. "Of course." Why did you really make this trip alone? I have known plenty of ranch women, and they are tough and capable, but this is a dangerous journey. There must be more to it. Victoria considered not answering, but something about the quiet darkness and Owen's genuine curiosity made her want to be honest. My father wanted me to marry a neighbor's son, a man twice my age who has already been widowed once. He is wealthy, and the match would be good for the ranch, and I said no. My father was not pleased. When my sister's letter came, it seemed like the perfect excuse to leave for a while, to let things cool down. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I wanted to prove I could take care of myself, that I did not need to be married off for the sake of convenience. And now? Now I've proven that pride comes before a fall, just like the Bible says. No, Owen said firmly. You have proven that even capable people sometimes need help, and that there is no shame in accepting it. That is different from needing to be taken care of. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and saw understanding in his eyes. Thank you for that. Get some rest, Victoria. We have a lot to do before the drive starts next week. The following days fell into a pleasant routine. Victoria helped Mary with the household chores, insisting that she earn her keep. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothes, and worked in the garden. Mary was delighted to have the company and the help, and the two women developed an easy friendship. But Victoria also found herself drawn outside whenever she had free time, watching the ranch hands work with the horses and cattle. Owen was everywhere, overseeing operations, working alongside his men, handling the 1,000 details that kept a ranch running. She watched him gentle a skittish colt, saw the patience and understanding he showed the animal, and felt her respect for him grow. On the third day, Owen found her leaning on the corral fence, watching him work with a young horse. "Want to help?" he called out. Victoria did not hesitate. She climbed through the fence rails and joined him in the corral. "What do you need?" "Just stand there and talk to me while I work. Let her get used to the idea that two humans are not a threat." So Victoria stood and talked, telling Owen about her life in Colorado, about her brothers and her father, about the ranch and the mountains she loved. Owen listened while his hands moved with quiet confidence over the horse, calming it, building trust. "You have a gift with them," Victoria observed. "My mother used to say I was half horse myself. I spent more time in the barn than the house as a child." He smiled at the memory. "My father wanted me to focus on the business side of ranching, but my heart was always with the animals." "I know what you mean. I love the ranch work, the physical labor of it. My father always said I should have been born a son." "I think you are fine exactly as you are," Owen said, and then seemed to realize how that sounded. A faint color rose in his cheeks. "I just mean, there's nothing wrong with a woman who knows her own mind and can do hard work." Victoria felt warmth spread through her chest. "I think that might be the nicest thing anyone has said to me in a long time." Their eyes met over the back of the young horse, and Victoria felt that flutter again, stronger this time. Owen felt it too. She could see it in the way his expression changed, becoming softer and more open. The moment was broken when Pete called from outside the corral. "Boss, we have got a situation with the south fence." Owen sighed. "Work never ends. Thank you for the help, Victoria." "Any time." That evening, Owen taught Victoria how to play poker with Mary, Pete, and Samuel. They played for matchsticks, and Victoria discovered she had a talent for reading people's tells. She won 3 hands in a row before Owen started catching on to her strategies. "You are a card shark," he accused, but he was grinning. "I have brothers," Victoria replied. "I learned early that if I did not learn to beat them at their own games, they would never take me seriously." The easy camaraderie around the table felt natural and right. Victoria realized she had not laughed this much in months, maybe years. The weight of expectation she had carried at home, the constant pressure to be someone she was not, had lifted. Here, she could just be herself. Later, as she prepared for bed, Victoria admitted to herself what had been growing in her heart since that first day. She was developing feelings for Owen Jackson. It was impractical, even foolish. She barely knew him. She was only here temporarily. But her heart did not seem to care about logic. The day before the cattle drive was set to depart, Owen found Victoria in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. "I have something for you," he said, leading a dappled gray mare out of a stall. "This is Daisy. She is gentle but has good endurance. I want you to have her." Victoria's eyes widened. "Owen, I cannot accept this. A horse like this is worth— Consider it a loan, he interrupted. You can pay me back if you want, or you can send her back from Deadwood once you are settled. But I am not going to send you off into the territory without a reliable mount. Victoria moved to the mare, running her hands over the smooth coat. Daisy nuzzled her shoulder, already friendly. She is beautiful. She is yours, at least for now. Owen moved closer, standing just behind Victoria. I want you to be safe. Victoria turned, and suddenly they were very close, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough that she could smell the scent of leather and sage that seemed to cling to him. Her breath caught. Owen, she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. He raised a hand slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. Victoria, I know this is not the right time or place, and I know you have plans that do not include staying here, but I need you to know, Owen. The shout from outside shattered the moment. We need you at the house. Owen closed his eyes briefly, frustration clear on his face. I'm sorry. I need to go. It is fine, Victoria said, though her heart was pounding. Go. He hesitated, then nodded and strode out of the barn. Victoria leaned against Daisy, trying to catch her breath. What had almost happened? What had he been about to say? And what would she have answered? The cattle drive started at dawn. 20 men, 500 head of cattle, a chuck wagon driven by an older cowboy named Frank, and Victoria on her new mare. Owen had given her a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun and a bedroll for the nights they would sleep under the stars. The first day was grueling. Dust rose in choking clouds, the sun beat down mercilessly, and the constant lowing of cattle filled the air. Victoria helped Frank with the meals, learning quickly that feeding 20 hungry cowboys was a monumental task. Her hands were red and raw by the end of the day, but she did not complain. They made camp in a valley with a small stream. The men took turns watching the herd while others ate and rested. Victoria sat by the fire, exhausted but exhilarated. This was real work, hard and honest, and she loved it. Owen dropped down beside her, his own plate of beans and beef in hand. How are you holding up? I'm fine, tired, but fine. You did good work today. Frank says you are a natural at camp cooking. Do not let him fool you. I burned the biscuits twice before getting them right. Owen chuckled. The men ate them anyway. They have had worse. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire crackle and spark. Around them, cowboys talked in low voices, played harmonicas, and settled in for the night. Owen, Victoria said quietly, what you were going to say yesterday, in the barn. Can we talk about it? He set down his plate, his expression serious. I was going to say that I care about you, more than I should, given that we have known each other less than a week. But there it is. Victoria's heart soared, even as her mind tried to be practical. I care about you too, but Owen, I barely know you and I'm supposed to be going to Deadwood. My sister's expecting me. I cannot just— I know. I am not asking you to change your plans. I just wanted you to know how I feel. He looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. But Victoria, when you get to Deadwood, if you find that you are not happy there, if you decide you want something different, I want you to know that you would be welcome to come back here. Not as a guest, but as well, as whatever you wanted to be. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. You barely know me either. How can you be sure? I know that you are strong and capable. I know that you are kind, that you work hard, that you do not complain even when you have every right to. I know that when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out from behind clouds. I know that in a week, you have become more important to me than people I have known for years. He reached over and took her hand. I know enough. Victoria squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. This was too much, too fast, too complicated. But it also felt more right than anything she had experienced in her entire life. Can we take this slowly? She asked finally. Can we just see what happens? We can take it as slowly as you want, Owen promised. Over the next several days, as the cattle drive moved steadily north toward Sheridan, Victoria and Owen spent every possible moment together. They rode side by side during the day, talking about everything and nothing. They sat together by the fire at night, shoulders touching, fingers occasionally intertwining. It was a courtship conducted in full view of 20 cowboys, but neither of them seemed to care. Victoria learned that Owen's father had died of pneumonia during a harsh winter, that Owen still missed him every day. She learned that Owen loved reading, but rarely had time for it, that his favorite time of day was early morning when the world was still quiet, that he dreamed of building the ranch into something that would last for generations. Owen learned that Victoria wrote poetry in a small journal she carried, that she could identify dozens of wildflowers by name, that she had once broken her arm falling from a horse, but had climbed right back on as soon as it healed. He learned that she was fiercely loyal to the people she loved, that she had a quick temper when she saw injustice, and that she longed for a life where she could be valued for who she was, not who others wanted her to be. On the 5th night of the drive, they were hit by a sudden thunderstorm. The cattle became restless, and every man was needed to keep them from stampeding. Victoria huddled in the chuck wagon with Frank, watching lightning split the sky and praying that everyone would be safe. When Owen rode past the wagon, she called out, "Be careful." He turned in his saddle, rain streaming down his face, and grinned. "Always am." The storm lasted for hours. By the time it passed and the cattle were calm again, it was nearly dawn. Victoria was helping Frank prepare breakfast when Owen rode in, looking exhausted but unhurt. "Thank God," Victoria breathed, and before she could think better of it, she ran to him. He dismounted, and she threw her arms around him, not caring that he was soaking wet and covered in mud. Owen held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I'm all right. We all are. I was so worried." "I'm all right," he repeated, pulling back to look at her face. His hands cupped her cheeks, and then he was kissing her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Victoria was breathless. "That was my first kiss," she admitted. Owen's eyes widened. "I hope it was not your last." "Not if I have any say in it," Victoria replied, and kissed him again. Around them, several cowboys whooped and hollered, but neither Victoria nor Owen paid them any attention. They reached Sheridan on a warm afternoon a week and a half after leaving Owen's ranch. The town was bustling with activity, full of miners, ranchers, merchants, and all the business that came with a thriving frontier community. Owen had arrangements to meet with a cattle buyer, and Victoria helped Frank settle the chuck wagon while the rest of the hands drove the herd to the stockyards. That evening, Owen took Victoria to dinner at the town's best restaurant. It was not fancy by city standards, but after a week and a half on the trail, it felt like luxury. Victoria had cleaned up as best she could, washing the dust from her hair and changing into her good dress, which Mary had insisted she pack. "You look beautiful," Owen said when he saw her. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Victoria replied, taking in his fresh shirt and neatly combed hair. Over dinner, they talked about practical matters. Owen had found a merchant family heading to Deadwood in 3 days. They had room for one more traveler, and the husband had assured Owen they would see Victoria safely to her sister's home. "So this is it," Victoria said quietly. "In 3 days, I will be gone. Unless you decide not to go." Victoria looked at him, seeing the hope and fear warring in his expression. "Owen, I have to go to Deadwood. My sister is expecting me, and she needs me. I gave her my word." "I know. I'm not asking you to break your promise." Owen reached across the table and took her hand. "But Victoria, I love you. I have loved you since that first night at the ranch when you beat us all at poker and laughed like you did not have a care in the world. And I hope, that you might love me too." "I do," Victoria whispered. "I do love you, Owen. But it is so fast, so unexpected. How can we be sure this is real?" "Time does not make feelings more or less real," Owen said. "I know my heart and I know what I want. I want you to go to Deadwood, help your sister, do what you need to do. But when you are done, when your obligations are fulfilled, I want you to come back to me. I want you to be my wife, Victoria. I want to build a life with you." Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "What if I change my mind? What if time and distance make these feelings fade? Then you do not come back, and I will respect that. But I do not think that will happen. Do you?" Victoria thought about the past 2 weeks, about how natural and right everything had felt with Owen. She thought about the way her heart leapt every time she saw him, the way his smile could brighten her darkest moments. She thought about the future she had been running toward, a future of uncertainty and obligation, and compared it to the future Owen was offering. "No," she said finally, "I do not think these feelings will fade. But Owen, I still need to go to Deadwood. I need to help my sister. I cannot abandon her. I would never ask you to. Stay as long as you need. Help your sister through the birth in the first months. But then come home. Come home to me." "Home," Victoria repeated, liking the sound of it. "Yes, yes, Owen, I will come home to you." He stood and came around the table, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. They kissed there in the restaurant, not caring who saw, sealing their promise to each other. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Owen concluded his business with the cattle buyer, while Victoria purchased supplies she would need for the final leg of her journey. They spent every possible moment together, walking through the town, talking about their future, stealing kisses when they thought no one was looking. On the final night, they sat on the porch of the boarding house where Victoria was staying. The merchant family was leaving at dawn, and this was their last evening together. "I'm going to miss you terribly," Victoria said, her head resting on Owen's shoulder, "and I will miss you, but it is not forever. A few months, that is all. Promise me something? Anything. Promise me you will write. I want to know everything that is happening at the ranch, everything you are doing. I want to feel like I am still a part of your life, even when we are apart. I promise. And you have to write back and tell me all about Deadwood and your sister and your new niece or nephew. I will, every week, I promise." They sat in silence for a while, both dreading the sunrise. Finally, Owen stood and helped Victoria to her feet. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a delicate silver ring with a small turquoise stone. "It was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they got married. I want you to have it, to wear as a promise that I will be waiting for you, and that when you come back, we will make this official." Victoria's hands trembled as Owen slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I will treasure it always. And I will treasure you always." Owen kissed her one last time, pouring all of his love and longing into it. "Go help your sister, then come home to me." The journey to Deadwood took 6 days with the merchant family. They were kind people, a husband and wife in their 40s with 3 teenage children. Victoria helped with cooking and camp chores, earning her keep and grateful for their protection. But her thoughts were always back in Wyoming, with a dark-haired rancher who had stolen her heart. Deadwood itself was everything Victoria had heard, and more. The town was rough and tumble, filled with miners seeking their fortunes in the gold rush. Her sister, Catherine, lived on the outskirts in a neat house her merchant husband had built. Catherine was heavily pregnant and delighted to see Victoria. "I was beginning to think you were not coming," Catherine said, hugging her sister as tightly as her swollen belly would allow. "It was a difficult journey," Victoria replied. "I have so much to tell you." Over the next few days, Victoria settled into her sister's home and told Catherine everything that had happened. Catherine listened with wide eyes, asking questions and demanding every detail of Victoria's romance. "So you are in love with a cowboy rancher," Catherine said, shaking her head in wonder. "Mama would have been thrilled. She always said you needed someone strong enough to match your spirit." "Do you think I am being foolish? We barely know each other." "I think you know what your heart wants. And Victoria, I see the way your eyes light up when you talk about him. That is not foolishness. That is love." 2 weeks after Victoria arrived in Deadwood, Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas, after her late husband's father. Victoria was with her sister through the entire labor, holding her hand and offering encouragement. When she finally held her nephew for the first time, tears streamed down her face. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered. "I am your Aunt Victoria." The weeks turned into months. Victoria helped Catherine care for baby Thomas, learning the rhythms of infant care and discovering she had a talent for soothing the fussy baby. She kept her promise to Owen, writing him long letters every week describing life in Deadwood, her sister's family, and her growing love for her nephew. Owen wrote back faithfully, his letters full of news from the ranch and declarations of his unchanging love. Victoria kept every letter in a small wooden box Catherine's husband had given her, reading them over and over until the paper was soft from handling. In his letters, Owen told her about the ranch's progress, about foals being born and cattle being sold, about Mary's garden and Pete's bad back. But he also wrote about his feelings, describing how much he missed her, how empty the ranch felt without her, how he counted the days until she would return. Victoria wrote back with equal honesty, pouring her heart onto the page. She described watching the sunrise over the Black Hills and wishing Owen was there to see it with her. She wrote about holding baby Thomas and imagining holding their own children someday. She confessed that she dreamed of him every night and woke reaching for him. 4 months after arriving in Deadwood, as winter began to set in, Victoria sat down with Catherine for a serious conversation. "I think it is time for me to go," Victoria said. Catherine looked up from where she was nursing Thomas. "Already? I thought you might stay through the winter at least." "You do not need me anymore. You are doing wonderfully with Thomas, and you have neighbors who have offered to help. And Catherine, I miss Owen so much it physically hurts sometimes. I need to go back to him." Catherine smiled. "I know. I have seen it in your eyes for weeks. When will you leave?" "As soon as I can arrange safe passage. The weather is turning, so it needs to be soon." "Then we will help you prepare. And Victoria, I'm so happy for you, truly." Arranging passage proved more difficult than Victoria had anticipated. Winter was indeed coming early to the territory, and most sensible travelers were hunkering down rather than setting out on long journeys. But Victoria was determined. She had promised Owen she would come home, and she was not going to let anything stop her. Finally, she found a freight company that was making one last run to Sheridan before winter. It would be cold and uncomfortable, but the company owner assured her they had made the trip dozens of times and knew the route well. Victoria booked passage immediately. She wrote to Owen, telling him she would be in Sheridan by early December and hoped the letter would reach him in time. Then she said her goodbyes to Catherine and her family, promising to write and to visit again when the weather cleared. "Be happy," Catherine whispered as they hugged goodbye. "You deserve it." The journey back was every bit as difficult as Victoria had feared. The first snows came as they traveled, and more than once they were forced to stop and wait for conditions to improve. Victoria huddled in the back of the freight wagon, wrapped in every blanket she owned, and thought of Owen and the warm ranch house waiting for her. They reached Sheridan on a gray December afternoon, nearly 2 weeks after leaving Deadwood. Victoria was stiff and half frozen, but her heart soared at the sight of the town. She was so close now, just a few days' ride from Owen's ranch. As the freight wagon pulled into the main street, Victoria saw a familiar figure standing outside the general store. Her heart stopped. It was Owen, tall and solid and real, looking up at the approaching wagon with an expression of fierce hope. "Owen!" Victoria called out, and then she was scrambling down from the wagon before it had even fully stopped, running through the muddy street with no thought for dignity or propriety. Owen caught her in his arms, spinning her around and holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You are here. You are really here." "I'm here. I came home." He set her down and cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "For how long?" "Forever, if you will have me. I love you, Owen Jackson. I want to marry you and build a life with you. I want to help run your ranch and raise your children and grow old with you. That is, if the offer is still open." "The offer will be open until the day I die," Owen said roughly, and then he was kissing her, pouring months of longing and love into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, Victoria was laughing and crying at the same time. "How did you know I would be here today?" "I got your letter a week ago. I have been coming into town every day since, waiting and hoping." He tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly familiar. "I could not risk missing you. I have missed you so much." "Never again," Owen promised. "From now on, we face everything together." They were married 2 weeks later in a small church in Sheridan, with Mary standing up for Victoria and Pete standing up for Owen. It was not a fancy wedding, but Victoria wore a dress Mary had helped her sew, and Owen looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I, Owen Jackson, take you, Victoria Owens, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Owen said, his voice strong and clear. "I promise to love you, protect you, and stand by your side through whatever life brings us. From this day forward, you are my home and my heart." Victoria's voice shook with emotion as she made her own vows. "I, Victoria Owens, take you, Owen Jackson, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you with all that I am, to be your partner in all things, and to build a life with you filled with joy and purpose. From this day forward, you are my home and my heart." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed Victoria like they were the only two people in the world. The journey back to the ranch as Owen's wife felt different from that first desperate ride months ago. Victoria sat beside Owen on the wagon seat, their shoulders touching, her hand clasped in his. Snow fell gently around them, turning the landscape into something magical. "Happy?" Owen asked. "Happier than I have ever been in my entire life," Victoria replied honestly. Mary had prepared a celebratory supper for them when they arrived, and the ranch hands all came to offer their congratulations. Frank presented them with a cake he had baked, slightly lopsided but made with care. Pete gave a rambling toast that made everyone laugh. It was simple and perfect. That night, lying in Owen's arms in the bedroom that was now theirs, Victoria thought about the strange path that had brought her here. A broken horse leg, a stranger's kindness, and a love that had grown faster and stronger than she could have imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Owen murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "About how lucky I am. About how a disaster turned into the best thing that ever happened to me." "I am the lucky one," Owen said. "I found you when you needed help, and you ended up being the one who saved me." "Saved you from what?" "From a life that was all work and no joy. From loneliness I did not even realize I was feeling. From believing that running a ranch was enough when what I really needed was someone to share it with." He kissed her forehead. "You made me whole, Victoria. And you gave me a home, a real home where I can be myself." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, secure in their love and the life they were building together. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. Victoria threw herself into ranch life, working alongside the hands during busy seasons, helping Mary manage the household, and learning the business side of ranching from Owen. She discovered she had a talent for keeping the accounts and managing supplies. Owen, recognizing her skills, gradually turned more of that responsibility over to her. "You are better at this than I ever was," he admitted one evening, as Victoria showed him how she had reorganized their financial records. "You are better with the horses and cattle," Victoria replied. "We each have our strengths. That is what makes us a good team." As the seasons turned and their first year together passed, Victoria felt herself blooming. She was doing work she loved, living in a place that felt like home, and married to a man who valued and respected her. Her father wrote occasionally, stiff letters that avoided mentioning their argument. Victoria wrote back with news of her life, but felt no regret for the choice she had made. In the spring of their second year together, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, the same porch where they had first admitted their feelings for each other. "Owen, I have something to tell you." He must have heard something in her tone because he turned to her immediately, concerned. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm fine, better than fine. I'm going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." Owen's face went through a series of expressions: shock, wonder, joy, fear, before settling on pure happiness. "Truly, truly. The doctor confirmed it yesterday when I went into town with Mary." Owen pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she had suddenly become fragile. "A baby. Our baby. Victoria, this is the best news I have ever received." "You are happy then?" "Happy? I'm over the moon. I'm terrified and thrilled and so grateful I can barely find words." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you happy?" "I am. I want this baby, Owen. I want to have children with you and raise them here on this ranch and watch them grow. I want all of it." The pregnancy was not easy. Victoria suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and there were days when she could barely keep anything down. But Owen was attentive and patient, bringing her crackers and tea, rubbing her back and reading to her when she was too exhausted to do anything else. As her belly grew, Victoria had to modify her work on the ranch, focusing more on the business side and less on the physical labor. She chafed at the restrictions, but knew they were necessary. Mary was a godsend, having been through pregnancies herself years ago, offering advice and comfort. In late autumn, as the leaves turned gold and red, Victoria went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting nearly a full day. Owen stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and offering encouragement even as he looked nearly as exhausted and frightened as she felt. Finally, as the sun was setting, Victoria gave one last push and heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "It is a boy," Mary announced, tears streaming down her face as she cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket. A healthy, strong boy. Owen cut the cord with shaking hands, and then Mary placed the baby in Victoria's arms. Victoria looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect face and dark hair, and felt love crash over her like a wave. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Owen sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, looking at their son with wonder. "He is perfect." "He is. What should we name him?" They had discussed names over the past months but had not settled on anything. Now, looking at their son, Owen said, "What about Matthew? It means gift of God, and that is what he is." "Matthew Jackson," Victoria tested the name. "I love it. Hello, Matthew." Little Matthew was a good baby, all things considered. He nursed well and slept in reasonably long stretches, though Victoria was still exhausted from the constant care an infant required. Owen helped whenever he could, rocking Matthew when he fussed at night, changing diapers without complaint, and showing a gentle competence that made Victoria love him even more. The ranch hands were utterly smitten with the baby. Pete carved him a small wooden horse. Frank made him a quilt. Samuel, the shyest of all the hands, presented them with a cradle he had spent weeks building in secret. Victoria was touched by their affection for her son. As Matthew grew from an infant into a toddler, the ranch prospered. Victoria's careful management of their finances allowed them to expand, buying more land and increasing their herd. Owen's skill with horses became known throughout the territory, and people began bringing him difficult horses to train, paying good money for his expertise. They added a room onto the house as Matthew grew, and then another when Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. Their second child, a daughter they named Sarah, was born on a spring morning when the wildflowers were in bloom. She had Victoria's dark hair and Owen's gray eyes, and her older brother was fascinated by her. Life fell into a rhythm of work and family, of seasons passing and children growing. Matthew learned to ride almost as soon as he could walk, and Sarah was not far behind. They were ranch children through and through, confident and capable, growing up with the same values their parents shared. Victoria and Catherine exchanged letters regularly, and every few years one family would visit the other. It was on one such visit, when Matthew was 7 and Sarah was 4, that Victoria's father finally came to see her. He showed up unannounced one day with Victoria's brothers, looking older and more weathered than she remembered. "Papa," Victoria said, shocked to see him standing in her yard. "Victoria." He removed his hat, looking uncomfortable. "I know I have got no right to just show up like this, but I needed to see you. I needed to see if you were truly happy." Victoria looked at Owen, who had come to stand beside her, then at her children playing in the yard, then back at her father. "Yes, Papa, I am truly happy." Her father's eyes took in the prosperous ranch, the well-maintained buildings, the healthy cattle in the fields. He looked at Owen, assessing him with the sharp eye of a man who knew ranching. Finally, he looked back at Victoria and nodded slowly. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I thought I knew what was best for you, thought you needed to make a practical match. But I can see you have made a good life here. I am sorry it took me so long to admit it." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She had not realized how much she needed to hear those words until he said them. "Thank you, Papa. That means more than you know." "Can we start over?" he asked. "I would like to know my grandchildren." "I would like that too." The visit lasted a week, and by the end of it, fences had been mended. Victoria's father and Owen developed a mutual respect, bonding over their shared love of ranching. Matthew and Sarah loved having uncles to roughhouse with. It was not perfect, but it was healing, and Victoria was grateful for it. The years continued to pass. Victoria and Owen added a third child, another son they named Daniel, to their family. The ranch grew and prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Victoria's business acumen combined with Owen's skill with livestock made them a formidable team. They faced hardships too. There were harsh winters when they lost cattle, dry summers when water was scarce, and the constant challenges that came with running a ranch. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and from the love that had only grown deeper over the years. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Victoria with a picnic by the stream where they had made camp that first night of the cattle drive. The children were staying with Mary for the afternoon, giving them rare time alone together. "Do you remember?" Owen asked as they sat on a blanket, the water burbling nearby. "I remember everything about that time. I remember being terrified and trying not to show it. I remember thinking you were the most capable man I had ever met. I remember starting to fall in love with you and telling myself it was impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Owen said, pulling her close. "We proved that." Victoria leaned into him, content and secure. "We did. And I would not change a single moment, not even the hard parts. They all led us here." "I love you, Victoria Jackson, just as much now as the day we married. More, actually, because now I know you in all your complexity and stubbornness and brilliance. I love you too, Owen. Thank you for finding me that day. Thank you for giving me a ride. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for staying, for choosing this life, for building it with me." They sat by the stream as the sun began to set, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever the future held, they would face it together. As their children grew into young adults, Victoria saw them developing the same values she and Owen had worked so hard to instill. Matthew became an expert horseman like his father, with a gentle way with animals that made Owen proud. Sarah inherited her mother's head for business and her father's determination, a combination that made her formidable. Daniel was the dreamer of the family, always sketching and writing, capturing the beauty of ranch life in drawings and words. Victoria watched her children with pride and joy, knowing that the ranch would continue long after she and Owen were gone. They had built something lasting, something that would endure. On a warm summer evening, many years after that first fateful day when her horse broke its leg, Victoria stood on the porch of her home, watching the sun set over the land she loved. She wore Owen's mother's ring still, though they had long since added a wedding band beside it. Her hair, once dark as night, now showed streaks of silver. Her hands were weathered from years of ranch work, but her heart was full. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. His hair was more gray than dark now, and lines crinkled around his eyes. But to Victoria, he was as handsome as the day she met him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, resting his chin on top of her head. "Everything. How a broken horse leg changed my entire life. How the worst day became the catalyst for the best life I could have imagined. No regrets? Not a single one. You? Only that I did not find you sooner." Victoria turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to cup his weathered face in her hands. "We found each other at exactly the right time, and we have made the most of every moment since. That we have, Mrs. Jackson. That we have." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Owen and Victoria stood together on the porch of their home, surrounded by the life they had built from chance and determination and love. They had faced everything the Wild West could throw at them and had emerged stronger for it. They had raised children who would carry on their legacy. They had loved each other fiercely and faithfully through everything. It was a good life, a rich life, a life well lived. And it had all started with a stranded woman and a cowboy who had the kindness to offer her a ride. From that simple act of compassion had grown a love story for the ages, one that would be remembered by their children and grandchildren for generations to come. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Victoria leaned into Owen's embrace and smiled. She was home, truly home, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. The Wild West had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately given her everything she had ever wanted: a home, a family, and a love that would last forever. Their grandchildren would eventually arrive for Sunday dinner, filling the house with noise and laughter. There would be stories to tell, wisdom to share, and love to spread around. But for this moment, it was just Victoria and Owen, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. I love you," Victoria whispered into the gathering darkness. "I love you too," Owen replied, "always and forever." And in that moment, with the stars beginning to sparkle overhead and the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night around them, Victoria Jackson knew that her life had turned out exactly as it was meant to. She had taken a chance, followed her heart, and found not just love but home. And that, she thought, was the greatest gift of all. The end of their story was really just a continuation of a love that would never truly end. It would live on in their children, in the ranch they had built, in the values they had instilled, and in the example they had set. Two people from different places, brought together by circumstance and bound together by choice, proving that true love was not just about grand gestures, but about choosing each other every single day. As the night deepened and the air cooled, Owen and Victoria finally went inside their home, hand in hand as always, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring, just as they had faced every day since that fateful moment in the Wyoming territory when a cowboy found a stranded woman and offered her a ride. It was a simple beginning to an extraordinary life, and they had made every moment count.